Startup Podcast PH is co-produced by One CFO, Credit Hero, Y Spaces, Tuala, Symph, Secuna, Schooltech Bedfolio, and Red Circle Global. Check out our partners in the description.
Welcome sa Startup Podcast PH, inspiring more Filipino entrepreneurs and innovators. We're live now here in Kita Spaces, here in Cebu City. And we're also live in Facebook. Hello. We have Symph, now building hyper-personalized software for startups and enterprises. And we have the founder and CEO, Dave Overton. Hello, Dave. Kamusta?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, Johnny? Thanks for coming to Cebu.
Of course, I love Cebu.
That's
And
good.
It's actually the second time here. So I've been here 2 years ago. I also
Okay.
interviewed some startups. But now I'm back to do a podcast series with Symph, the new Symph actually, and the startups currently being built, right, by
Yeah.
Symph. So I'm very excited actually to learn more about Symph, actually the story since you built it,
Sure.
and what you're doing now, what you're actually like changing or building now. So
Yeah.
let me ask you first, Dave. Ano nga ba ang Symph, or what is Symph?
That's a great question. So Symph is a company we started 16 years ago, 2010.
Wow.
And so back then, there weren't a lot of startups in the Philippines, right? Idea Space, Kickstart were just getting started. We were doing startup weekends. Like we were trying to inspire entrepreneurs and startup founders back then. And my co-founder and I, Albert, and then our third co-founder, Dan, we got together and we had this idea where we wanted to build solutions. We wanted to build startups for people's problems. And that was really where the origin of Symph came from. Now, there wasn't funding then. We couldn't really apply for incubators or accelerators. So we had to figure out how to generate revenue. And so we realized that there was a huge opportunity for us to build technology and software for customers. And so that's what we really did. Now, I would say fast forward 16 years, we've done a lot of that. We've built a lot of startups over the years. Some have failed. Many have failed, right? Let's be honest as founders. Many have failed, but some have succeeded. We've learned a lot of things. We had an early exit of a payment gateway that we were doing with Cash and Imlulier. And so we realized in the early days, right, e-commerce could not take off if there wasn't infrastructure. Then we've built some other startups. We have Lesson Planner, we have Find My Shots, we have Flying Tigers, which is another startup that we work with. And we're trying to figure things out. But I would say fast forward to 2026, the world has changed, right? AI has fundamentally sped up the way that we build software. And this hasn't been an overnight change, but I would say that the advances that we've seen from, say, November 2025 until now, the rate of change is happening so fast that we've rethought and we've gone back to, hey, what is it that we really want to do? What is it that we're great at? And AI can enable us to do that much, much faster than we could have even 6 months ago. So that's where Symph is. That's sort of the story and the journey over 16 years.
Wow. I mean, that's 16 years, but I mean, you actually summarized it in a very brief.
Still filling out loan applications for your business? Yeah, thought so. Save your time. Grow your business. With Credit Hero, one online application gets you loan offers from multiple lenders. Apply for a business loan now. Visit credithero.com.
But anyway, actually, what I want to ask, maybe I'll give back the question to you.
Yeah.
What really do you want to build? Because I mean, my question and what I always ask startup founders, what problem are you really solving? So maybe 16 years ago, Symph building software for clients, right? So what's their pain point really? What's their challenge that you're solving? And even now that you're accelerating how you do things with AI, so what really is that pain that you're trying to alleviate from these customers? Yeah.
Sure. I think to really understand that, I would have to zoom out just a little bit, right? So I think that as Symph, as the company and as founders, we think of it on two planes. The first is we think of problems that really affect humanity. So the reason I'm in the Philippines was because my wife wanted to start a nonprofit, right? And she wanted to deliver babies. So she has a startup It's not really a startup anymore. It's been around 22 years.
Oh, what's the?
It's called Glory Reborn, and they've delivered this is the mug. I'm branding, but they've delivered like over 7,000 babies, right? And they're targeting like marginalized moms and patients and clients, right? And so really providing life-saving care, So I would say that where Albert, Dan, and I aligned as founders of Symph, we really had this idea of technology has a way of changing the world. How do we harness that, especially for, say, developing countries, right? So my perspective is technology can be something that can enable huge amounts of development, right? If I go back in time, 22 years ago, 23 now, that I landed in Cebu, there wasn't an IT park the way that we know it now, right? Like BPO wasn't yet a thing. It was just then starting to take off, right? Internet connectivity 2003 was very slow. But as that infrastructure started to develop, call centers started to come into the Philippines, and look at the development that that's brought, right? It's amazing the amount of jobs, the economic impact that has had for a lot of Filipinos. That's amazing. Now, how do we think of technology? It's in a similar light, right? How can technology continue to have an impact? Because underlying BPO sector is voice over IP, right? If there was no voice over IP, something like a call center industry could not exist. And then it became not only a business process outsourcing, but then it became knowledge, and then it became something that could grow. That's the way that we as founders of Symph think. And so ultimately, like the problems that we want to solve are problems that affect humans, problems that affect human life, right? Like what are the problems that affect humans? There's many. And with AI coming, maybe the problems are moving much faster than we expected. I actually gave a talk in 2017, and it was at the time when we were talking about Industrial Revolution 4.0, right? So this was the very early times of when we were seeing what machine learning could do, right? Like the sort of some of the core principles of AI. And at the time, I gave a talk to the BPO industry of Cebu, and I told them the days are numbered of the BPO industry being successful because technology is going to massively change the way that this service is delivered. Now, I was wrong because I thought it would happen earlier. So I admit that. But I would say, look at like what we face right now. The likelihood of a call center being disrupted by AI is 99% sure. Now, does that mean that the whole industry is going to be wiped out? No, but it does mean we're going to have to adapt and change really quickly. Now, going back to Symph, what does that have to do with what we're solving and how we solve things? I think the second parallel plane that we've been thinking about is we have always been interested in building community around startups. And part of that is external. So doing events like Geeks on a Beach, doing things like Startup Weekend, supporting external founders and trying to mentor them and shape them and help them. But as well, internally thinking about as a company, how do we inspire teammates to really build startups? How do we help them find products that they want to solve? And so I would say that in a lot of ways, our DNA has always been more closely aligned with maybe what we would call like a venture builder, meaning that it's not just one problem that we want to solve. We want to solve a lot of problems, and we want to build a team and build up the capacity for us to solve problems. And so I think that's why Symph like is an overarching concept or an idea. It probably doesn't just have one thing that we want to do. It has many things that we want to do.
Yeah, and it's actually very interesting because as they say, usually like a startup is somehow like guided by the founders' principles. And I saw many software development companies who just, build software for, they get a client, they build software for that client. But I think it's also the principle behind Symph that's also the reason why you're building startups now, right? And which we will actually interview also later because it's in the structure of the company. It's in the culture, maybe it's in the vision. That it's not just building software, it's actually solving problems using software, using technology. And that's why you're actually moving to like this, what you're doing now. But actually, what I want to ask first, going back to your story.
Yeah.
When you came to the Philippines, and you said maybe technology was like a bit on the younger age.
Yeah.
How was it like? Because it will not be easy or maybe it's an opportunity. Mm-hmm. Technology is not yet here. Not yet like booming. And then, as you said, IT park is not yet here. So how was it like maybe starting or like introducing or like bringing something into a place that's not yet that familiar with it? Yeah, like
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I think there's some interesting things that I would say I observed in the Philippines. You guys were mobile first before we even understood what that meant, right? Like when I got to the Philippines, we only had Nokia phones. We didn't have nice Android iPhone. That wasn't a thing yet, right? It hadn't been invented, and we had Nokia phones. But I remember meeting Filipinos who had like 2 phones, and that was just common, right? They almost had more phones than anything else. But one of the interesting things was not a lot of people had desktop computers, right? Like that whole having a personal computer had not really happened. And so in a sense, I would say one thing that was very interesting to me from the Philippine standpoint is you sort of leapfrog technology cycles, right? Like instead of going through the whole personal computer cycle that like I grew up in, right? We had a desktop computer at home. We didn't really have laptops in the early years. Because they were, number one, just very expensive, and number two, very clunky. They weren't really like that effective. Now we all have laptops, right? Like we're looking at Johnny's laptop right here. But I would say that one thing that was very interesting to me is that a lot of Filipinos actually have just been mobile and mobile only, right? Like mobile first in the true sense of that, because until you can really afford having a laptop, you still have an incredibly powerful computer in your pocket all of the time. And it's very common that people of any socioeconomic class can have a mobile device, right? And with that mobile device, they can access some of the same technology that you and I can with our laptops, right? Like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, like all of those are mobile and they are very friendly. They're very easy to interact with there. In a sense, like a lot of the messaging model or the chat model of these amazing AI tools, I would say we're inspired heavily by mobile interaction. And if there's one thing that Filipinos were great at, it's texting and sending chats, right? Like, man, Facebook Messenger, I can feel my phone vibrating in my pocket and it's probably people messaging me on Messenger right now. And so I think that in a lot of ways, like just to tell my story, I would say that there's this arc that the Philippines has always been on of being somewhat ahead of the curve, even though yes, in a general sense, okay, we've been waiting or stuck behind technology. I saw like a tweet and clearly I think this individual was, using some biased information, but he was sort of like saying, okay, it's amazing that now suddenly all of the islands of the Philippines can get connected with Starlink, but then they're going to wake up and find out that the BPO and call center industry is being disrupted. And while I think that that's interesting or sort of like, it makes people talk about it, I don't think that tells the whole story, right? The Philippines has been very well connected. Now, yes, in the remote regions, obviously cell service is not that great. You're going down to edge, 2G, 3G type of connectivity. And so it's amazing to have Starlink now. But the capacity of Filipinos to use technology and to use the mobile phones that they've had, I would say actually like prepares you more for the future. Now, the way that I view KPO, look, I think it's a great industry. And this isn't me knocking on it, right? Even when I gave my talk 2017 that the end was coming, my reason for doing so wasn't to like knock down the industry. I think the industry is great and I think it's turned a lot of transformation possible. But I also want us to think about what's next, right? What should the Philippines be thinking about next? And to me, startups, entrepreneurship, that makes a lot of sense. And I think with where we are with AI and what we're seeing there, this is really a window of time where a lot of the people who are here and have been empowered with some of the mindsets and the practices of the KPO industry should actually venture out and say, hey, I can build something. Because I think the DNA of startups is fundamentally changing. You don't need to raise as much money as you used to. You can hire an AI assistant and it can help you code and program a lot of things, right? I think that the same is also true over operations. You don't have to expand your team. You can be empowered to handle things more effectively with AI now. And I think that's a game changer because you could be a startup of, say, 3 to 5 people, and you could have a serious annual recurring revenue with that type of team size now. And to me, that's very exciting.
Yeah, first of all, what you said about the Philippines kind of like leapfrogging the technology cycle. Yeah, I mean, now I'm thinking about it, and it's often strange, right? And but I also think maybe it's connected to because the Philippines is more of like consumer driven. So like
True.
once there's something that they can use, for example, the cell phone, right? For
Yeah.
communicating across islands, for
Yeah.
example, they will jump into that
Absolutely.
immediately.
Absolutely.
Right? So and then, but yeah, you're it's actually very correct that more than the market, it's also really like it's resonating what the Filipinos really want and
Yeah.
need, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm going to Symph again.
Or one more point. Let me add one more thing
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Right? Like I think when I grew up we had a landline phone, like a home phone, right? But why did we have that? Because there was infrastructure to have that. We had phone lines run throughout the city. And in a US city or even in the continental United States, like there's big tracts of land, but it made sense for the phone companies to wire that land. Now, in an archipelago of 7,000 islands, running lines like that is extremely costly.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard. So again, like landlines, we didn't see that much penetration into the market. Okay, in the metropolitan areas, yeah, Manila, Cebu, Davao, like we did, but that's because it was a consolidated area.
Yeah.
It's a small land area. Now, in the remote areas, it didn't make sense because why would a phone company like spend all that money? The same was true when DSL came, right? The same was true when fiber came. It makes sense to run fiber in city areas, but to run it into the provincial areas, that's extremely costly and it doesn't have a good ROI. So that's why cell services, you mentioned, like that's what we leapfrogged to. We didn't go the landline model where everyone had a landline. We had cell service because we could go anywhere with it and it made more sense. Now, the US is almost caught up to that, right? Like most US households nowadays, they don't have a landline anymore because we don't need it. We just sort of have an internet connection and we still have our cell phones, right? You just can't justify it. Now, some like in my generation and above, we might still have one because it's like the normal thing you do, right? We're just not used to not having it. But I would say the Philippines leapfrogged that. I think the second is internet connectivity, right? Even in the early days when there was cable TV or like satellite TV, we could get internet on satellites. Now, obviously, Elon Musk and SpaceX and Starlink like took it a step further. And it's amazing because it does leapfrog that technology, right? So instead of waiting for the telcos to wire fiber down to the remote regions like Bukidnon, Mindanao, you can just get a Starlink. And say you're more of a remote worker type, you can actually travel around the nation with it. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and I get reminded again that the Philippines is actually like a unique case. Like we are an archipelago, and not all solutions in first world countries or in anywhere in the world can be adaptable in the Philippines. So actually, we're actually solving not that different, but we're kind of solving a different angle to these problems that the world has. So and I just want to share because I came from a research background and I just realized, for example, this is a very far of example, but for example, Japan is very prone to earthquakes, but they were able to build knowledge, research that can withstand earthquakes. So now the Philippines, we have a unique case. We're an archipelago where the islands are separated by water. So like what you said, maybe we can build technology that's actually very useful to our case. Let's say connectivity beyond between islands, or maybe I know shipping. Philippines, Cebu City is very, very rich with the shipping industry, right? So we can actually solve these problems, build technology, and who knows, this may be very useful. We can actually lead technology in the whole world because we have a unique case, right?
I agree. And I think that if anything, you should, like my encouragement as somewhat an outsider, but who's been here and invested in the Philippines, I would love to see more of that, right? I would love to see sort of that Filipino ingenuity and pride of, facing the challenges that you face because it could help other countries, right? It's not to say that you have to export everything. I think there's a lot of original problems that you have here. And my hope is that in this next wave of what we see with startups is that we're actually seeing a lot of those startups and those mindsets solve problems for Filipinos, but then realize that that can also scale globally, right? Because the world is a changing place. The world is a very dynamic place. And so I think a lot of what you learn here can go elsewhere. And that's my hope for startups.
I'm inspired. I'm very inspired. It really makes me inspired to see a future where in Philippines somehow leads. So I think with the startups and also with how Symph is building new startups, we may let's see, we may be at the forefront of solving new problems in the whole world.
I hope so. I mean, like things that I think about, and I know there's a startup working on some of this right now. But think about it from, say, just the industry that we were talking about, like KPO and specifically call centers. Like, think about how much knowledge and expertise the Philippines has in that space. So how could the Philippines lead in that initiative rather than sort of waiting for AI to change the Philippines? How could the Philippines actually be the startup of what AI call center technology will look like, right? Because if there's a workforce that really understands the challenges of what that will entail, it's right here. And so my hope is that we can actually transition some of the knowledge of what industries have lifted the tide in the Philippines, and we can shape that and shift that into a future that will continue to lift the tide, of all Filipinos.
Yeah, we're actually a very rich knowledge base for for the business process outsourcing industry.
Absolutely.
Who knows?
Absolutely.
And with AI, with machine learning, we have big data that can actually be used. So
yeah.
Oh, that's. I mean, this is really mind blowing actually for me. But anyway, going back to Symph, right? So like on how you're doing this, is there because you've already been doing this for 16 years, right?
Yeah.
So since 2010 and now that you're kind of doing something new, how really do you do it? Because I think you're kind of doing it somehow uniquely. I mean, you don't need to share like the trade secrets. And also right now, Symph, correct me if I'm wrong, because I saw the team building picture last.
Yeah.
I think that's last
September.
year.
Yeah.
September. Yeah. You went to Singapore.
We
I
did.
think. Yeah,
we did.
What's maybe the culture or the system or how you build a big team like that, and how you motivate, how you manage that team to build software, to solve problems, to cater client needs? Like, how do you execute? How do you operate Symph, basically?
That's a good question. I'm not sure there's like a concise answer, but I will try my best to sort of paint a picture of what I think has worked. For me as a leader, I think one of the strategies that I've always been mindful of is that I need people who are smarter than me on my team, because I'm not great at everything. There's a lot of things that I'm actually really bad at, and I need people who can be way better than me at those things. And so our mindset in Symph, and I know that my co-founders share this with me, is we never want to be the best in our company. We actually want to be the people that are building up everyone else to do better, to be better, and to be better than us, right? And so we came up with this principle years back. And I would say we were sort of always doing this, but we figured out how to articulate it. And you typically see like an organizational chart, right? And it's a triangle, right? There's like the leader at the top, and then a few executives, and then it goes down and down
Upper
and down.
management, middle management, lower management.
And so what we realized is that that's actually not the way that we believe leadership should work. And so we inverted it. We flipped it over. And so our view is that myself as the leader, and then my leadership team, we're actually at the bottom. And our goal is to like support people who are not under us, but above us, right? Like we've inverted the whole thing. And I would say that this is the way Symph has always worked, but we finally figured out how to articulate it a few years ago. And so this model is, I think, something that I won't claim it's unique, right? Like a lot of leaders believe in this type of stuff. You can think about servant leadership. You can hear about topics along those lines. And I would say it's very much aligned with the way that we do things. But I think what we realized is that we want to lead that way because we want to empower the people who are closest to our clients, who are closest to the problems, right? So whether it's a client service that we're delivering or it's a startup problem, we feel that the people most empowered to see it, to understand it, and to change it are those who are closest to it, right? Not some executive who's 3 to 4 degrees of separation away. And so I think what we have always done is tried to build that way. Now, it hasn't been perfect, right? Like there's been a lot of hardship throughout the history of Symph, and I've made a ton of mistakes as a leader. But we have always tried to be very candid about mistakes that we've made and what we learned from them. And so I would say in just, like a few short words, I think having a few guiding principles has helped us like articulate this. And that's been how we've led the team. We are definitely problem solvers, and we identify people who are similarly minded. We look for that in interviews that we have. We look for that in candidates that we talk to. We look for people who are eager to solve problems and will go above and beyond, not like give up their life, but would really care deeply about a problem, right? And I think as we've transitioned, and as you're going to learn from some of the startups you'll talk to later today, a lot of these ideas come from problems that they personally have. These are problems that they experienced as a mountaineer or a trekker or a hiker. These are problems that as a runner doing marathons, they had, right? And these are problems that we also see in community around us. Like one of them, their mom was a teacher. And so he could relate to this problem of teachers. And so I think that we always want to think about that and empower people to do that. Now, I think in a general sense, that's been something we've aligned a lot of the team around, that they believe in that, they buy into that. We also have a high degree of trust. Every morning that I wake up, I'm just blown away that this many people would trust myself, Albert, Dan, to lead this company and to do crazy things. And a lot of times that means that we don't have it all figured out, right? We do not know all the answers. But we view the world as an experiment, and we're going to try a lot of new things, and we're going to figure out quickly what works and what doesn't work, and then we're going to repeat the process.
Wow, that's a very startup mindset. Like, experiment, and do it fast.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, what you said about the inverted triangle, it's really very nice. I mean, because before it's the triangle, right? And then there even came a time where the in thing, like with Google. The flat. But now it's more. It's newer than that. It's an inverted triangle that you support the talents that you have. You support the people that you have, and maybe help them or manage them in them doing their best to solve their problems.
Yeah.
And also now you said earlier that Symph is also becoming like a venture builder.
Yeah.
But still Symph has that custom software building, right? So is it like there are people who build the software for the old clients that you have, and there's the people that build ventures, or that like it's a mix?
Great question. I would say that right now it's a bit of a mix, right? Mm-hmm. So we still have, say, more of our traditional service delivery model. But what I would say is happening, probably within Symph, but across the industry is this. We see a future where having custom software, hyper-personalized software is a reality. We've seen this internally just with what we can do with AI and how we can program things, how we can build things, whether it's Claude or Codex or Gemini and anti-gravity and what they're doing there. I would say that it's been very, very interesting to realize that the constraints of software have shifted. So an example of this would be, if someone came to us with an idea, whether they were a startup or they were more of a middle market or a large enterprise, they would say, "Hey, Dave, we have this idea. Here's the scope of that idea." And then there's usually two questions. How long will it take you to build it? And how much will it cost, right? And AI has fundamentally disrupted that, right? AI has shifted that bottleneck that used to be there. And what was the bottleneck before? The bottleneck was that we didn't have enough resources, right? We didn't have enough time. We didn't have enough hours in the day for our software developers to build faster. Now, AI has fundamentally shifted that because it can develop software. And the AI that you use today is the worst level of AI that you're ever going to use, right? Like tomorrow, it's going to be better. And we have seen a rapid change in that from November last year's release until now.
Actually, yeah.
It has gotten so much better, right? And the rate of change is so fast. I'm old, so it reminds me of like internet connectivity. It reminds me of the way that e-commerce and the internet boom or the .com era really took off. Now, I'm not saying there aren't bubbles. There definitely will be. And we will see things like move very fast and then jerk back, or sudden changes you can't predict the future. But I would say that this change is something that we are seeing, and it's fundamentally changing the way that we develop software. Now, what does that mean for a company like us? These are the questions that we've been asking. We've been asking these questions for a long time. And I think around September, actually, to be honest, it started more in June of last year. We started to articulate and figure out what we see the future looking like. And I think that's where this idea of hyper-personalized software really started to be born. We went into September, we had our team building in Singapore, and we had a great time. And a lot of that was built to inspire our team to start thinking about problems, to start thinking more like startup founders and saying, what are the problems that I see in my community, in my situation, in my family? What are those problems and how might I solve them? How might Symph and technology actually solve those things? And so that was sort of the challenge that we posed in September. Now, fast forward to early this year, we realized that this hyper-personalized thing is becoming very real. Now, not everyone's going to mess around with Claude or ChatGPT and Codex and build their own solution. But I do think that clients for a number of years, and this isn't really a knock on the SaaS industry. I think SaaS is great because I remember days where I bought software and I bought it from a shelf and it came on a disc or a CD or a DVD. And I then had to go home and install it and set it up. That era passed because the web came out, right? The internet replaced that and software as a service was born. And that became the ultimate great delivery model of software, because if something broke, man, a developer could fix it right then and there. Software that shipped on disks, how could you update that, right? It was so complicated. And so that was a fundamental shift in the way that we delivered software. Now, the catch was, say, Johnny, you have a unique way of interacting with your customers. Well, you want to use a CRM, so you go to HubSpot or you go to Salesforce. They're going to tell you the way that you should handle your customers, right? Because they've designed the model. Yeah. Now, a lot of times that's okay, right? That'll work for you. But you have a unique case, but you had to fit yourself into the SaaS model. You had to fit yourself and you had to say, okay, I'll do it this way. This is the way that their software works. This is therefore the way that I will work as my company. Let's talk about accounting solutions. Very much the same. Okay, there's still general accounting practices. We have standards and different countries follow different standards, but there's always something a little bit unique about the way that you do it, right? Maybe you're a nonprofit, maybe you're a startup, maybe you're an enterprise. There's some uniqueness to the way that you account for things, but all you can do is fit into the SaaS model, right? It's really hard to customize that. Okay, you put in a feature request with them. Well, it's up to them if they have, number one, enough clients who are demanding that, and number two, the developer capacity to implement that. But very rarely would you see a hyper-personalized solution, right? Because say we use HubSpot, and this isn't picking on HubSpot. They're actually pretty progressive. But if you use it one way, and then I as Symph use it another way, HubSpot isn't going to deploy a custom solution for you and then a personalized solution for me. They won't do that. It doesn't make financial sense. It also doesn't make technology sense, right? Because they want to maintain one product. They want to have one core offering. Now, AI has fundamentally opened that opportunity up. And what we see is a future where having hyper-personalization is the reality. So rather than you fitting into the SaaS model, you can bring your uniqueness, and AI-enabled development or AI agentic development can actually customize that for you at relatively little to no cost, right? And I think that's the shift that we see as Symph. And so what we are doing and building, we've come up with a number of key apps that we think are core to business operations that we are offering in this hyper-personalized model. So say something like a workflow management tool or a dashboard for corporations, right? These are things that corporations need, but a dashboard, it's only as valuable as the data that you have there. But how do you get your data from multiple systems in? Hyper-personalization can do that for you. So rather than trying to figure out how to consolidate all of your data, AI can do that and it can bring it in. And then you can actually have a dashboard that shows you how your business operates. And that's the future that we see. So we see two opportunities there. We still see a need that customers would come to us and say, hey, Dave, we have this solution we want you to build. But we also see that that is changing. We won't build software the way that we used to, right? Like the way that we developed software 3 months ago, 6 months ago, it has died. And we have now fully shifted over to an AI agentic or an agent native workflow and development process. Because I think this is the way that we see the future going. And it empowers us, right? If you've paid any attention, and your viewers I know have, like watching what's happened with OpenClaw, right? And there's a XClaw, right? Insert Nano or Giga or whatever other claw, but OpenClaw in particular, a very, very interesting project that blew up in, I want to say, less than 3 months, right? Invented by one creator who just sort of was like playing around, built a ton of resources and things that would make this work, but really saw an opportunity like to have an agent work for him and do all of these interesting things. To then, he's been acquired by OpenAI, right? Like that is an amazing journey. Even yesterday, I think they announced that they have more GitHub stars than React, which like React powers half of the internet these days. So amazing progress and just fast change. So I think if anything we see with hyper-personalization is that the way of the future is something that's going to change very rapidly, because what you want and what one of your viewers want is different, and it should be personalized. Software should be able to be personalized to you, to your unique workflows, to the unique ways that you want to do things, whether it's personally or in your business. And that's the future that Symph is building.
Wow. Actually, wow. And actually, you're actually solving this trade-off. Like, as you said, custom, really personalized, really what they want.
Yeah.
But it can be slow and it can take a lot of resources.
Absolutely.
SaaS, on the other hand, can be fast to use because it's already there. But it can be a bit restricted because it's basically you if you're a client, you use what they build.
That's right.
So it's like you're marrying the two, or like you're combining the two, such that you come up with something that's customized but fast.
Exactly.
Right? And you use current technology, AI, and actually come to think of it, like what we said earlier about the Philippines having a huge knowledge base for the BPO industry. Symph has a huge knowledge base for like programming, developing. So you're using that knowledge and AI to build fast custom software for people, or basically for solving problems, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I don't think this would be possible if we hadn't had existed for 16 years and built something like 2,000 products, right? I do think it is that knowledge that has enabled us to see this. Does it mean like it's the end of the world? I don't know. Like I didn't anticipate that software development would be on the front of the disruption path, right? If I go back to my 2017 talk, I thought it would be more like call center agents. I thought it would be more of, even like delivery vehicles, right? And we've been predicting that for many, many years. And even in the US, right? Like shipping and trucking is still a very human endeavor. It doesn't mean that self-driving isn't coming along, but it's taken longer. But what we've seen with software development, even software design, one of my nephews is in town, and so I had breakfast with him this morning, and we were talking about ideas. And he builds and does like 3D printing. He has bookmarks that he makes, and he sells them on Etsy. And so I was asking him, okay, like, what do you think about software? What do you think the future will be? And so we sat there, and as we had breakfast, we vibe coded an app. We built like a sort of a 3D playground. Oh. And by we built it, I mean, he basically like dictated the idea to Codex, and Codex built it. Oh. And within, 15 minutes, we had a working prototype. He could like put shapes down on a 3D grid. He could name his character. He could move around the map. He could put different shapes. And then we had to add perspective so that we could stack the shapes vertically and build buildings, right? Like, was it as good as Roblox or Minecraft? No. Was it as good as like, I forgot the one that Autodesk has, Tinkercad or something like that? No. But he was able to build it, right? Like, and I think that is an amazing perspective. And so as I look at my own kids, and I think 15, 10 years from now, what's going to be possible? It's going to be amazing. But it is a shift that we have to embrace. And I think for us, You said it so well. Custom software used to be something that only a few could afford or justify paying for, right? It didn't make sense. Like, I'll just use HubSpot, I'll just use that. And again, no offense, HubSpot. You guys have done great. You're a great startup. Love you guys. You're just a big target, so I can pick on you a little bit. You just use Canva. You just use what you can, right? Like, you use the tool and they're amazing, right? Like, look at how much Figma has changed the design world. Awesome. I love it. But now you could actually build something custom to what you're doing. And I think that is a unique proposition that we never had before, because the economics of doing that previously, it took too much time and it took too much money. AI has fundamentally changed that.
Yeah, it's actually really a disruption. I have two thoughts on this. First, basically, fast prototyping, right? Fast prototyping, that's very important in the startup world. Fast MVP, create it, show that it works, and then build on it. But the other thing that's maybe kind of also disruptive, because here in the podcast, I kind of find a trend with new and revenue earning Filipino startups. They're many are actually in the SaaS industry.
Yeah.
ERPs,
Yeah.
School management, payroll, CRM actually, etc., etc. But again, I actually see the same problem, that not all of them, but they have a problem with retention, because once their clients try them, they want to have something more than they want to build in-house. So I think this is kind of going to that direction, right?
Yeah.
As you said, these are like the common office productivity software that companies use. But eventually, different companies have different cultures, different teams, different compositions. So as they realize along the way, they will actually want to have something personalized to them, right? So I think this is where Symph is actually kind of how Symph is kind of like disrupting what's going on in the technology world right now.
Yeah. Thanks. It's an honor that we're maybe disrupting things, but I would definitely say that is the view that we have of the world, right? For so long, software development was constrained based on the resource, the resource that you could afford and or the resources that you could bring, right? So if you want to develop custom software, like you have this unique workflow, okay, then you had to build out a software development team. And in the last decade, that's an expensive undertaking, right? It comes down to, can you manage that? Even competition, right? When the pandemic hit, we saw a ton of Filipinos really go out and look at getting jobs for the big startups, right? They could work for Facebook. They could work for Meta now. They could work for Google. They could work for any of those companies remotely, because everyone was suddenly on an internet connection from their house. And I think that's great, right? Like, that was super successful for a lot of Filipinos. At the same time, I think that one of the most interesting things that we are seeing is that the cost of building out that team is not as big as it once was, right? Even something we're launching and talking about, we call it the agency. And what we've realized is that this model of like software development, say a custom app used to cost you maybe $250,000, $250,000, something in the range of like 10 to 15 million pesos, right? To build your startup app. That's expensive, right? Like, okay, if you're a Filipino startup, how do you budget that? Do you raise money, right? Even if you're a US startup, like you're putting money in, you've gone to your dad and your mom, hi dad, I love you. And they've put money in and they've invested in you. And, that's awesome, but that's really expensive and really risky. But now, okay, what if you could get the experience of someone like Symph, who's built for 16 years and built thousands of products to harness the AI, right? It's not to say you can't vibe code things on your own, but launching to production can be a little riskier, right? Like you do still need some type of expertise. Yeah. You do need that knowledge. And so what we're launching is called the agency. And so basically, rather than sort of paying this huge fee up front or over 6 months, we can realize your idea and you pay us monthly. It's sort of like a monthly retainer. And then it can be customized, right? Okay, your users now want this. Oh, okay, sure, no problem. Like, we're going to lean on agentic development, but we have the seniority of a software development house that has built thousands of apps. So we know how to guide. We know how to build the guardrails in. We know how to ensure that the quality of what is developed by the AI actually meets your needs. Like, okay, should it just use Supabase or should it use Firebase or should it use Postgres? The vibe coding, it's going to pick whatever's most convenient, right? And I don't blame it, right? But there are times where one has an advantage to another one. And that's what you have to think about. And that's what Symph is doing with the agency. So we still see this opportunity to have, in a sense, custom software development, but we see it shifting business models. It's not like this one big price tag. It's something that we see more on a monthly recurring basis.
Trust the digital future with Twala. Secure and tamper-proof digital signature. Electronic notarization service. And custom AI agents for intelligent document workflows. Visit twala.io to learn more. In today's digital world, your organization needs more than just technology. It needs a strategic partner. At Symph, we build web and mobile apps that drive innovation for startups, enterprises, and organizations worldwide. Visit symph.co today.
Protect your assets from bugs before bad hackers exploit them. And launch your products seamlessly with Secuna, your trusted partner in cybersecurity. Receive reports in real time and work with security experts to find bugs in your products before others do. Let's make your security our priority.
Actually, wow, that's also kind of unique. And now that I actually have a new idea. I mean,
Go.
We have the term economies of scale, right?
Yeah.
For like production, because once these companies build like a huge volume of production,
Yeah.
their prices become lower.
Yes.
Now with Symph, I think this is what we call, this is my this is just my invention. Expertise of scale, because of your expertise, you can repeat it many times. Because
Right.
of the knowledge base that Symph has created, you can repeat it many times. You can make better decisions.
Right.
You actually build faster even.
Right.
So you can create software, custom or personalized software.
Yeah.
That's really for the company at actually a lower cost, because you kind of not really repeating, but
Yeah.
you already have the
Yeah.
knowledge, right?
Exactly.
Right? So it's
true.
It's also scale. It's scale
Yes.
with a lower cost, right?
Exactly. I would agree. I think you're articulating it very well. And I think again, right, like it depends on who your audience is, right? So if some technical startup founders are listening right now, they're like, why do we need Symph? You're not the customer, right? Like, and I don't mean that in a mean way. If you can leverage AI and you know what to do with it, you should do that, right? And so my sell to the agency or clients of the agency is not to convince people who understand AI or technology that they should hire us. It's more of a perspective of saying, hey, if you can leverage AI, you should be all in on it, right? Like if you're a developer right now and you're watching, or you're a designer right now and you're not using AI, you should really catch up. You have to catch up, because this is going to change the way that we work, right? We are seeing this. We tend to spot things early, right? 2017, I was predicting the demise of the BPO KPO sector. I was wrong. I was early, but I would still say that the point is still valid. It's just a matter of timing. Now, what we're seeing with AI, you could probably say like, yeah, Dave, you're probably going to miss this one too. I might, but this is a monumental shift. And from my perspective, I would be very fast to move into this. Now, if you're non-technical, I think that's where our fit is, right? There are a lot of people who, frankly, they interact with ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude on a daily basis, but it's just sort of like talking. It's not really building things. Maybe they haven't explored Claude Code. Maybe they haven't really built something like that. Those are the clients that I think the agency could really empower. You have an idea, you have something that you want to do, you sort of know AI could help you, but you're not the type of person who's going to go spend 4 hours customizing the command line interface or, the app to get what you want. You want a trusted partner who has experience. That's where the agency fits in. Now, I think everyone should be leaning into AI. Is it scary? Absolutely. Do I have it all figured out? No, definitely not. But I think that the faster we move, and maybe, going back to the initial topics we talked about for the Philippines, I think the faster that the Philippines can figure out what is our expertise and how do we leverage AI with that, the better this country will do in this next wave. And this wave is coming, right? Like we saw last week or the week before, a huge shift in the stock market because of like there was a SaaS sell-off, right? Huge amounts of money were lost because of fear, right? And, I'm not saying that fear and greed are always the best things in life, but I think we need to be embracers of reality. I think it was Ray Dalio who said, like, you have to have this hyper embrace of reality. And I think that that's very true. The possibility has gone that AI will change the world. It's now a probability. And I would say it's a very likely probability that AI is fundamentally going to shift the way that we do things. And the sooner that we can embrace that, and the sooner that we can acknowledge that, talk about what the future should look like and how we can leverage it, I think the better off this country will be. That's the strategy that Symph has embraced. It would be really nice if we could just keep doing business as normal. Unfortunately, we can't. Yeah. That's not what the market wants right now. That's not the opportunity that we have. And so I love my team. I want to keep operating. I want to keep people employed. I want to keep making a difference. And therefore, I have to respond to the reality of what AI is changing.
Actually, what you said earlier about how the Philippines can leverage AI and how can the Philippines be maybe at the forefront. Just thinking about the larger picture, the Philippines, AI uses data. AI needs data, right? And Philippines may have a very unique big data that can actually be very useful. So it can actually be an angle or something where the Philippines can build, right?
Exactly. Look, like customer service data, call center data. The ideas I have, if I could think about that data and get access to that data, I think you're right. The Philippines is very rich. I think even in terms of service mentality, I think Filipinos are uniquely suited to adapt to any culture. And that is something that could be taught to AI, right? It could be influenced with AI, right? And the abilities that AI enable for people to interact in their own language, I think would be amazing. Like say, imagine this interview in 6 months and you could speak in Tagalog and I could completely understand you and respond in English and yet you would hear Tagalog perfectly. That future may not be that far away, right? And look, Filipinos have powered service industries all over the world, right? Like cruise ships, entertainment. I think there are so many unique talents that Filipinos do have that will continue to shine in the future, right? And will AI change the delivery of those things? I think so. But at the end of the day, I think Filipinos are ingenious people. And, I've spent all of my adult life here, more than half my entire life in the Philippines. And I think that it's a country worth investing in. So I'm still optimistic about what the future holds for the Philippines.
Actually, that's what I want to ask next. Maybe let's go a bit on your story.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm very curious. Before going to the Philippines, what were you doing? And then, actually, my next, a bit harder question. Now that you're in the Philippines, why did you choose to stay? Why did you to build? Of course, I think you have your family here, right?
Yeah.
But, and your wife doing Glory Reborn.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could have moved. You could go anywhere, but now you stay. Maybe because also of Symph or
yeah. Good questions. Okay, so before I moved here, I was just a kid, right? I was in college and
in the United
States, yeah. And so in my first year of university, I went on an international trip, and I went to Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka really captured my heart, right? I've always wanted to go back to Sri Lanka, and my wife knows this as well. And for many years, we thought we would go. Now, what I would say opened in my mind was there's so much opportunity outside of the U.S., right? And look, the U.S. is great. It's still home. My family's still there. My parents are there. A lot of my friends are still there. But I think what I realized in life is that to me, one of the most important things was having an impact or doing something of impact, doing something of meaning. And I realized that I wanted to go to a different country, most likely a developing country, and I wanted to see how could I help? What could I do that would be impactful, that would be meaningful? I think this is where my wife and I were very much aligned, right? She wanted to do something similar. And so she studied midwifery. She came here to the Philippines and did a study abroad program. And she fell in love with the Philippines, right? Much like I did. And so, the story of love is always that, someone chases someone. And so I was the chaser, right? I chased her. And in order to convince her to marry me, we agreed that, okay, we'll move to the Philippines after we get married. We were very much aligned, like we can have an impact, and that's what we wanted to do. And so my vision was always to do that. I'm an entrepreneur type, right? So when she told me she had this idea for a maternity clinic, I was like, okay, I'll help you get it started. I know how to think about all these things. Well, this is how we'll build it. We'll do this. And so that's what we did the first couple of years that we were here. And then I worked, I helped bring a Starbucks too, because I like coffee. And at the time, Starbucks was like probably pretty good coffee in that era. And so I helped them bring the first branch of Starbucks to Cebu. And I worked there as a barista. It was also great because I got to understand like local culture. I got to meet a lot of people. And so I had a lot of fun, and then I could drink coffee. So I was happy. Then after that, I went and I worked in a company called Bigfoot. And Bigfoot did some of the first outsourcing services here in Cebu. And then specifically, I helped with their entertainment. So they had a film and media division. They did a lot of filming and video. And we were at the forefront of like what you could do with Apple technology and post-production. And I got to meet a ton of talented Cebuano artists, and it was amazing. A lot of them are still producing great content to this day. And so it still excites me, right? Like we see all these things. I think what kept me here, to be honest with my wife and I moved here, we thought we would only be here for 5 years. We thought, okay, we'll be here for 5 years. We'll build up this nonprofit. I'll do my thing, and then we'll leave. And it wasn't like we'll leave and never come back, but we wanted to go somewhere else, right? Like I wanted to go to Sri Lanka. And I was like, look, we could do it in Cebu, and then we could go to Sri Lanka, and we could do it there. And then maybe we could go somewhere else, like Ghana or, a place in another country and do something similar. That was sort of the vision that we had. Now, I think lessons you learn along the way. Man, leading things and building things takes a lot longer than you expect, right? And look at most startups. It's like a 10-year journey minimum. And so I think that Glory Reborn took a lot longer to build, right? It's still building. It's very successful. But as with anything, like, can you really leave? Those are questions that you have to ask as a founder. What will happen to the vision of the organization if you leave? So I would say all in, we realize that we'll probably stay here longer than we expected. Now, I think we're also at a point where we love the Philippines. And I would say as much as maybe the US is still home because I grew up there, the Philippines is home now. This is where my kids were born. This is where like home has been for many, many years. My family and my wife's family have all been very supportive. Her brother lived in the Philippines for a number of years. Our parents have traveled here and love it here. I think that the Philippines is in a unique position, right? And so why did I stay? Filipinos are great people, like just being candid. You could say there are different characteristics of every country, but if I generalize, Filipinos are some of the warmest and friendliest and most hospitable people you will ever meet. You can become friends with them in no time, right? And it's not just because I'm a white guy and people are like, hey, Joe. That doesn't happen as much as it used to. But I would just say that there's always like a friendly demeanor, right? The other day I was in like a gym area, and in the locker room, I struck up a conversation with two men, and we actually became kind of friends, but we didn't know each other's names, right? And I think there's a uniqueness to Filipino culture where you can actually get to know people without sort of like having this formal introduction, and you can talk about life. And they asked me, they knew all about my family. They knew about where I lived, and I knew about what they did and where they were from. And, they were enamored because I've been here so long and I could speak Bisaya. But it was just a unique conversation. And I'm not saying you can't have that elsewhere, but I would say that the Filipino people are very, very good at that type of thing, where you can just be understood and you can eat. And there's a togetherness, right? Like in Cebu, we would say like kaon na, which is like let's eat. But it's a collective type of activity. And in America, we're not collective like that. Even like when I sit down for dinner with my wife, she wants to eat my food and I'm like, no, it's mine. It's mine. But in Cebu, and I would say in general in the Philippines, everything is for everybody, right? There's this sharing mentality. There's this collective group. And so even if you're an outsider, people, like if they start to eat, they're going to invite you over and they're going to say like, here, eat with me, right? It's just such a normal thing. And so I think some of those characteristics of the culture kept me here, because it's just such a warm and refreshing thing. Now, I would also say that in terms of where I see the startup community, I've seen it grow a lot, but it hasn't gotten to where I want it to be. And so part of me, I'm not a quitter, and maybe I'm hard-headed, but I'm holding on to seeing more success for that, right? Like, I really want to see a unicorn from a Filipino startup, right? And it's not to say Symph, right? Like, I'm a hybrid. I'm not exactly American. I'm not exactly Filipino. I'm somewhere in between. But I would say, like, my dream is to really see a successful unicorn in the Philippines. And it's not just about the money or the zeros. It's more about the success and the impact that they would have. And I want to see that. My friend Tina, who organizes Geeks on a Beach and is really responsible for that whole thing, we used to talk about this, and I think she coined the phrase, like, she wants the Manny Pacquiao of startups, right? Because, like, look, Manny Pacquiao put the Philippines on the map for boxing. And I think that is sort of what we're looking. And it doesn't have to be one individual. It doesn't even have to be a guy. I would love to see multiple types of recognizable founders who are Filipino. And I think that's my hope and my dream. And so in that sense, I probably still am very long on the Philippines. Even if I do move back or move somewhere else, I would still say that my team and my company are here. And I very, very much believe in the Philippine innovation opportunity. And I'm very long on that.
Yeah, and I think the Philippines, as you said, is kind of like in a unique position, right? And for me, even if the journey of having our first unicorn takes a long time, I mean, the Philippines, we're in a unique position, and we're actually solving the problems that we need. So if it's a unicorn coming from our country and it solves a problem that's present in the country, it's actually a very big win, because I mean it's not always about the money, the valuation. For me, it's about the problems. Are we solving the right problems? And maybe having a unicorn that solves the country's problems, utilizing the country's talents, wow, that's a very, very big win.
Yeah. And I mean, look, this isn't to say that we don't have great founders, right? Like, don't misinterpret what I'm saying. But I would say we still have work to be done, right? But that's always my view on life, right? I'm somewhat an optimist, but maybe an opportunist, where I still see the opportunity to improve things. Like, man, founders have grown so much in the Philippines since I started being involved in the startup community. We've come so far. And I think that's amazing. And, I take no credit in that. I think it's just amazing that we've seen ingenuity. We've seen continuations of technology, of improvements of things, right? Like, even Jason Torres and what he and the team at Better Gov are doing, like, that is amazing to me, because I remember him from, like, early days of, like, Roof Camp and things like that, like in the startup scene in Manila. And that's where I met him. And again, we were just like geeks. We were just people who liked technology. And now to see that grow, to see, like, startups grow around that and with individuals, and he's just one person. I'm not trying to highlight him per se, but I think, like, there's so many cases of that. And I want to see more of that in the Philippines. And I want to see more Filipino founders be successful. And to be honest, I would say success is going to look very different in this new wave of AI startups. You don't have to raise as much money. You don't need as much capital as you used to. I think VCs are going to be disrupted. Hi, VCs, love you. Still fund my startups, but I think that there's a reason to fundraise, right? And VCs know this, right? VCs are very smart, and I think they're leaning into this. I think there are reasons to fundraise. And look, building AI startups is also very, very expensive. OpenAI just closed the biggest round ever, I think. And look, like, those are serious valuations, because why? Compute power, the energy needed, the hardware needed, that's huge. So you're seeing this sort of, like, gap of the widening of, okay, frontier models and these LLMs that are building, they're going to need incredible amounts of capital. But there's also this gap on the other side where little startups or micro startups can start, and they can leverage that technology, but they may not need to raise as much capital as they used to, but they can get to incredible ARRs or MRRs. And I think that's very exciting, especially for a country like the Philippines.
Wow. Anyway, Dave, I'm just curious. I mean, going back to the story, how did you actually build Symph? How did you meet your co-founders? And then, and maybe why? And did you see maybe back in 2010, Symph grow into something like this?
Yeah, good question. You know, I wouldn't say that I saw Symph growing to something like this. But it would be more of like the details were unclear to me of what it would become. I always saw Symph growing as something of like a startup builder, right? Because that was really the vision that we had. So my first co-founder that I met was Albert. We met because we were involved in the Tech Talks meetup group. Okay, so this is like back in the day. And it was run by Tina Amper, another guy named Mark Buenconsejo. And then I started helping out once I left my career at Bigfoot, right? I started getting involved because I wanted to see what was happening with technology and startups. And literally, we would just meet for coffee at like a Bose Coffee or a coffee shop, and we would just hang out and talk, and it was a lot of fun. And then we started to have bigger meetups, and we would bring people in, and they would share about their startups, or they would share about technology. It was a ton of fun. Like very early days, you know, had that gritty feel. Like we would have pizza and soda, and that was about it. But it was really, really fun, and just met a lot of great people. And so we had pitch night for startups, and that was one thing that we were just encouraging. So it was like a Friday night. It was in IT Park. Exist had a space there, and they let us use it. And I remember Albert pitched his startup, and at the time it was a startup called Spell Dial. And so the principle was like dial names, not numbers, right? And so it was like, you know, he was thinking, you know, it's so hard to remember people's numbers, and if you lose your phone, like what would you do, right? And so, I mean, it was kind of like the DNS for phone numbers, right? And I think it makes sense. Again, like it probably didn't have the traction and the stickiness to be really successful. But I remember during his pitch, I thought, okay, this kid is interesting because he was a kid at the time. I think he was 19. He might have been 19, 20, somewhere in that range. And I was like, this kid has a ton of potential. And so I talked to him afterwards, and I just said like, hey, you know, I'm here to help you and support you. If you need anything, just call me, right? And so we connected. And then, you know, he called me and he was like, hey, I need help with my startup. And I was like, sure, like, let me, you know, I'll try to look into this. I'll think about it. I'll be an advisor to you. And he was like, well, what do you want from me? I was like, I don't want anything. Like, you know, I just want to help you, right? I want success to happen. And so I helped him. And then I was doing Symph at the side. We had like a couple of team members. We were solving problems and like getting to know customers and looking at the market. And we had an office. And then he said, hey, I need like an office space to hang out. And so I said, okay, you can come work in my office. And I was already thinking like, okay, I really want to work with this guy. But at the same time, my desire to see startups succeed was greater than my desire to like hire him, if that makes sense. And so I really wanted him to succeed with Spell Dial. And so I helped him as much as I could. He was doing pitching contests with people like Jojo Flores, who at the time was doing something like On3, startup competition and all of this stuff. And, you know, I just supported Albert, tried to help him through that. And there came a point though where he was like, hey, I'm not making any money. Can I do some projects with you on the side? And I was like, sure, let's find some projects. And yeah, you can do this. And, you know, again, I don't want to steal you from your startup idea, right? Like, I think that is the future that you should be focused on. And as we got to know each other more and more, we realized we were very deeply aligned with having an impact and really making a difference. And so we decided and talked to his girlfriend, now his wife, at the time, because she was his co-founder, like what we should do. And so this choice was made that we would start Symph, like we would really build Symph, and it would become sort of a startup builder. That was the vision that we had. Now, Albert and I are both terrible designers. Terrible. I'm not kidding. AI has made us much better, and we're happy with that. But we were both terrible designers. And so we were running the startup weekend in Cebu. And this guy named Dan was pitching his startup, and his designs were great. And we were like, oh, we need a designer co-founder. And so we started talking with Dan, and we started like, you know, just getting to know him. And we realized like, yeah, we should bring him on board as a co-founder. And so that's how we met Dan. That's how we brought him on board. But I would say that the three of us really were aligned around creating things that would make a difference. We coined this like phrase, love, change, hack, right? And we called this like the ethos of Symph. And I think it actually like represents the three of us pretty well. It's not to say we don't all have characteristics, but like Dan is definitely love, right? He is a UX designer and he loves understanding user problems. He loves like creating beautiful things that people fall in love with. And so that has always been like his ethos and what he's great at. Albert is change. If there is one person in this world who just wants to constantly change everything, it is Albert, and he is driven that way. And I love it because I do like change. And hack is probably me, because I would say it's not like hacking into systems or like making things break, but it's finding solutions in creative ways, or thinking about like, how do we turn this problem over so we could approach it differently? So instead of building for 6 months, we could actually build for 6 minutes and we could find the solution that we need. And so that ethos has brought us together and has probably carried through a lot of changes in the years of Symph.
It is actually amazing and actually interesting because the story with Albert, how you found the talent, how you wanted to hone that talent even without anything in exchange. I think it's still the principle you have now. I mean, building. Not actually hiring, but like having these talents in Cebu and actually all over the Philippines, right? Symph has people all around the country.
Yeah, we do.
Coming to the company, coming to the team, and then not just hiring them, but like pushing them or honing them, helping them be their best and helping them solve their problems. So I think what you have back then in 2010 is still, it got bigger, but I think it's still the overarching principle.
I think you're right. No, I mean, I definitely think you're right. And I think sometimes people get confused by that, right? Like even sometimes the team members, I think they get confused. They're like, but I just want to do my job. And we're kind of like, no, we want you to think bigger, right?
Especially in the Philippines. I mean, I'm not to say, but I mean,
you can say it. I won't say it.
I mean, sorry. I mean, I always say this actually to start a podcast. There's also a part of it I want to change because somehow Filipinos, I mean, we have this employee mindset. We just do our job. Even me, to be honest, it's hard for me to create. I mean, I always get back to I just do my job, etc. But I think it's I mean, with what Symph is doing, it's something that we can change, and maybe once we change that mindset, we're not just the employee mindset, we have the employer mindset or something like that, or not employer, but basically problem solver mindset.
Yeah.
We can actually be on a different level.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say like everyone has that, right? Like even I have that as the founder. There are days where I'm just like, I'm tired. My kids were up late last night. I was doing this or I was doing that. I didn't get enough sleep. Relationships are challenging, right? Like something happens in life. Like it's okay. It's okay, right? Like I think first off, just understanding the nature of mindsets is so important, right? So I think you're good for calling it out, right? For like bringing attention to it. Because I think that's what brings awareness. And with awareness, then we can think how we think about things, right? And so I think like, there's a ton of books and information on this, but like Thinking Fast and Slow by Kahneman, like that's a great book on just the way that we think, thinking about like Newport and, deep work, right? Like how do you intentionally focus on some of those things? How do you really like cultivate a mindset where you can switch, right? And one of the conversations we have with our team is around this because, okay, if we're still doing client projects, that sort of is employee mindset, right? It's like, okay, I have a boss and the boss isn't always Symph. It's like the external boss, right? You have a client and they're your boss. And so you have to like do the morning routine and you have to check in with them and you have to have meetings and like it kind of grinds on your soul, right? And sometimes with the team, that's what we have to talk about, that it's okay to feel that way. And it's also okay to try and like protect your time or guard your time and say, okay, I'm going to do this for this many hours, but then this time I'm going to try and protect it a little bit more and I'm going to focus on these things. Now, man, it's still hard, right? Like, and look, I haven't figured it all out. So don't take this as like me preaching. This is more me just sharing of what's helped me. But I would definitely say that, we need to lean into mindsets. We need to lean into the architecture of our mind so that we can prepare for the future. And I think as a country, that is something that I definitely want to invest in, right? We talk about this a lot. The education system, and this is global. It's not just the Philippines, right? The education system, it cultivates our mind to think in a certain way. And that is to like have the right answer. and to think of everything as like right or wrong. And that is not always conducive to building startups and finding problems and discovering problems, right? Because a lot of times when you're solving problems, you're actually asking questions because you don't know the answer. And you're more inquisitive, or you're exploring, and you're trying to be curious. And a lot of times, like, that will not perform well in school, that type of mindset. And so I think sometimes there's a great book called Reboot by Jerry Colonna. I would highly recommend that to any startup founder. But one of the things that he talks about is like this principle of ghosts in the machine, right? And this is sort of like what the original like bugs in software were coined. But he talks about it from our own personality. And it's like, what ghosts exist in my machine and my mindset that I grew up with, right? What did school train me to do? What did my family upbringing train me to do? One that he always talks about is like, what is your relationship with money? Because your relationship with money usually came from how your family had money or didn't have money. And so your relationship with money will influence your life. It will influence your business. It will influence everything around you. And I mean, even personally, I had to dig through a lot of that. Like, what is my relationship with money? Like, what did I learn? And it's not a bad thing. Like, what did you learn from your parents? What did you learn from your school? What did you learn from, say, church, or, your belief system? Like, what are those things? And so I would just say, I agree with you completely. And I think we need, maybe you, Johnny, can lead on this, but like, we need a Filipino to really lead the mindset and like tackling the mindset of things.
And actually, I think we also need like a change in the system or the structure, as you said, with the educational system. I mean, it's just, basically saying the right answer. But actually, for example, with how you build companies, or how startup founders can build companies. Maybe first, for example, for Symph, there's a time you do that traditional way of thinking, let's say 4 hours, or let's say half of the time, and then half of the time, that's the problem solving time. So like, I think, of course, I'm happy to lead that. I'm happy to do that. But there needs to be a change in the system, in the structure of how schools, companies, and even other establishment, other institutions, like for their people, right? Yeah. There has to be it has to be implemented that there's a resource allocated to honing or to doing that problem solving thing, right? So maybe even for companies, for startups, what I'm saying is that it should also be like a leadership move. It's like a leadership action that leaders must push the people to, or manage the people to have this. Allot this time to this, allot these resources to this. At the same time, allot these resources to this.
Yeah. No, I agree. And, I think it does influence in terms of your circle, right? Like your circle of leadership. So I can push this mindset in Symph and it can have an impact. But again, like going back to that inverted triangle, inverted pyramid style, my hope is that by enabling that, those individuals can then take it to their circle of influence, right? And we can have like a network effect. Changing school, really, really hard, right? Like, and it's not that I don't want to, but it is a question of influence. Like, do I have the degrees of influence that I need to change that? I'm not bashing government, but government moves very slowly and it takes a lot of time.
It's objectively true. Government is bureaucratic by structure, so yeah.
and it should be, right? Like, and I think there are reasons it's bureaucratic.
Yeah.
And they're not all bad. It's frustrating. Yes. It's frustrating when you have to deal with them and you're tied up in bureaucracy.
It's also checks and balances for that.
Yeah, but a lot of it, like, is that you actually don't want them to move too fast, right? Like, it can be scary when they do. Anyway, let's not go political. But that being said, I do think that like systems of education, they are very ripe for disruption. However, that disruption is probably going to take decades, not years. Now, will AI speed that up? I hope so. And I think that change will happen sooner rather than later. But that's been something that we've been talking about since I was in school. And that's a really long time ago. That's like 25 years ago. And so I would say that it's not that these things won't happen, but sometimes it's timing, right? Like market, luck, timing, these are all real factors that we see in the startups. Now, what I would lean into, if this resonates with you and what Johnny is saying, I think that you should think about what influence you can have on yourself, on those that are closest to you, and then sort of what circles around you can you influence? Because I think that's where I would say focus your effort. Because if you can pioneer this, if you can really be a, it sounds cheesy, but like a role model in this space, then I think other people will follow you. But it always takes that first leader to be bold, to take a step out, to try it, to fail, to fall down, to even be criticized, but to get back up and to continue on, to continue and say like, hey, I'm gonna really lean into this. I'm gonna develop this, and this is why. And I think that is something that is not lacking, but it's very hard to train. It's hard to empower people to do.
Okay, I'll be that person.
Go.
Yeah, but I mean, actually, that's why I did this podcast, just to share.
Yeah.
Why I did this podcast. I actually teach before. I teach at the university.
Okay.
And like the start innovations. That's what I wanted. So I'm from engineering, engineering. I want to introduce more of innovations, not just innovation per se, but the mindset.
Yes.
So that's why I actually did the podcast. I wanted to interview startup founders so that we could share the mindset to my students. And then like with the podcast, now people from different parts of the country listen to the podcast. So I hope somehow we share that, or we spread that problem solving, or that improvement, or that innovation mindset to more people in the country.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think we need more people like that, right? And Johnny, for the work that you've done, thank you, right? Like, thanks for highlighting these things. Thanks for going around interviewing people. And, I think you interview people from all walks of life, right? And you were with the mayor from Bye City.
Yeah.
And so I think like that's very interesting, right? Because it's not to say that your circle of influence is only startups or only founders. It is to say like your circle of influence can expand. And that's really good, because what if that one mayor takes like one piece of what you're talking about, or this mindset shift, and he starts to implement that? Then it brings change, right? And I think that is the way that I've seen change happen. It is very rarely top down. And especially in a country like the Philippines, I would say it usually starts at the grassroots level. Now, what we need to empower sustainable change that can have a bigger impact and can continue to grow momentum, right? Look, I mean, and this isn't just shout outs to Jason, but I think the Better Gov initiative is very amazing. And I love it, right? Because it started from a grassroots idea of a bunch of nerds or geeks who were really frustrated and really mad about what was happening. And they realized, hey, we can build things and we can improve. Now, I think AI has enabled some of that, right? Because if you had tried to build Better Gov 10 years ago, it would have taken over your life. You would have had to give up your job. You would have had to sacrifice everything else and build that. And it's not to say that wouldn't have been amazing. That would have been amazing. It would have been very meaningful. But now with AI and agentic development, you can actually have an impact and let AI do a lot of, say, the heavy lifting, right? But you can steer it in the right way. And so, I mean, what I love about Better Gov, they have so many collaborators. They have such a wide gamut of contributors and really smart people who are working on solving problems to make something better. And I think that is an amazing opportunity, right? And so if I look at what you're talking about and I think about this mindset, I hope that we see that 100x throughout this country, right? Whether it's a startup problem, whether it's a government problem, man, technology could make it better. So go find a problem, fall in love with that problem, and solve it.
Education is evolving, and so are we. Introducing School Tech by Edfolio, your all-in-one school management solution. Built for schools of all sizes, School Tech bridges the gap between school and learning management. Driven by passion, School Tech makes educational technology accessible, affordable, and easy to use for schools everywhere. With an integrated approach, School Tech simplifies management across different departments and enhances efficiency in operations. School Tech transforms the way schools manage, teach, and learn. School Tech, taking school management solutions to the next level.
Running a business? Make it smarter with Red Circle Global. Streamline operations, boost productivity, and manage everything in one powerful ERP system. Book your free business demo today at redcircleglobal.com, guided by one of our top experts.
Yeah, and I think slowly we'll get there. We'll
I think
get
so.
more people to.
But I
to-
think I would challenge that, and I will just say this. When I talk to my AI agent, it's pretty funny because I will say, okay, here's the requirements. Like, let's make the PRD, the BRD, let's make all of the documents for the structure. Let's plan out what we're going to build. And then usually at the end of the plan, it will tell me, okay, Dave, this will take about 6 months of development. And I'll kind of look at the screen and I'll scratch my head and I'll say, where did you come up with the basis of this development? And then it will say, oh, okay, I factored in that we'll need a team of 2 developers, 2 designers, 1 product manager. Okay, but you're an AI. How long will it take you to build this? And do you know what it tells me? Maybe 30 minutes. So I will just push you. It's very traditional and it's very natural to use history as our basis of progress and what is possible. But I will say one thing. AI is changing that fundamentally. And do you know what happens next? 15 minutes later, it's built out what I asked it for. And that is a game changer because it would have taken my team, it would have taken me 6 months easily to build something of that capacity. Now, is it perfect? No. And devs out there, I know you're criticizing this. It's okay.
Vibe coding.
Vibe coding. Does it need fixing? Yeah. Does it need guidance? Is it ready for production? Absolutely not. But it is much faster than it ever was before. And here's the thing. This is the slowest it's ever going to be. It's only going to get faster and better next week, next month, next year. So as much as I would say slowly, I get what you're saying, but I'll challenge you and I'll say, let's move faster.
Okay.
We have to.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's move faster, actually. Yeah, and maybe we should, let's think of ways on how to make it fast. Let's think of
Absolutely.
ways. So I also challenge everyone listening to this. Everyone, let's do this.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I think, just sort of like in wrapping up and closing, I think the rate of change, it scares me, right? Like, I'm not saying like there isn't something to be scared of. There is. And we have a lot of hard questions to ask, but it's sort of like riding a wave. The worst thing you can do is sit still because then the wave will crash down on you. If you really want to catch a wave and you want to ride it, you have to be paddling and you have to match the speed of the wave, or at least get as close as possible to that so that you can ride the wave. Now, if you're not a surfer and you have no idea what I'm talking about, I think it's like one of those things of momentum, right? Where if this big truck is moving towards you, you can't just stand there. If you stand there, you will die. And I do think that AI is sort of like that. I haven't figured out exactly where we're going in the future or what the road ahead looks like. But if we just stand still, we are going to get run over. And so the best thing that we can do is move and move as fast as we can. And so I would just say my challenge to you, to your audience, to those that you inspire, Johnny, is that let's move and let's move faster, because this is an opportunity that the Philippines has to leapfrog an entire generation of development. Like, imagine that we could leapfrog the last 20 years of development cycles that would be like, quote unquote, necessary for the Philippines to progress. If that could happen, imagine what the future would look like. That excites me. So let's go.
Let's go. Let's ride the wave.
Let's ride the wave.
And move fast. And think differently. I think we can think differently in order to move fast, and let's ride the wave. Thanks so much, Dave. Let's wrap up this conversation. Actually, we're almost 2 hours, I think. It's already lunchtime. Thank you so much, Dave, actually, for this I think this is the longest podcast episode I've had. Because it's very engaging. It's very, I didn't even feel, it's already, I think it's more than 1.5 hours. But thank you very much, Dave, for all that you shared, for sharing the story. And actually, this is really kind of even life-changing for me, all that I realized and learned right now, even with what Symph is doing, like solving that trade-off as we've discussed earlier. This is really something to think about more, especially for our listeners. By the way, thank you so much, Dave. If our listeners want to know more about Symph, maybe there's someone who's interested to I don't know, collaborate or
Absolutely.
maybe have a hyper personalized software built.
Yeah.
So how can they contact you maybe or
Yeah. Feel free to, drop us a line. We're on the socials everywhere. Symphco is the usual handle. So that's at SYMPHCO. If you want to visit our website, that's a great one. If you really want to check out hyper customized software or hyper personalized software, I think that's a great opportunity. Check out agency.symph.ai.
your agent. Oh, how do you spell that? Sorry.
Agency, so AGENCY dot SYMPH dot AI.
Okay.
Agency.symph.ai. And I'll send you the link so you can put it in
Yeah.
the show notes below.
Yeah, I'll also put those in the description below.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dave. This is a very wonderful conversation. And basically, let's move.
Let's move and let's move
move.
fast.
Yeah, thank you
Thanks,
so
Johnny.
much, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners. Let's see. Oh, wow. We already reached hundreds of viewers. Yeah. And there's
Nice.
still a few still tuning in up to this point. So thank you so much also to all those who tuned in. Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much to our 65 patrons. This episode is super powered by Asplex PH Academy, our official e-learning partner. Get certification on Lean Six Sigma, project management, data science, and more. Architect Space Solutions. Architect provide ground station services, space data analytics, and technology supplies to grow the Philippines' role in the global space ecosystem. Divico Technologies Incorporated. IT solutions specializing in software development, blockchain smart contracts, digital wallets, and cybersecurity. NutriCoach. Personalized nutrition and weight loss programs for you. Argum AI. Make smarter decisions by presenting both sides of an issue as argued by two distinct AI models. Pixel by Implement. Turn content into opportunity, grow deeper connections, and earn more. Only with Pixel. Sign up at pixel.implement.co. School of Profits. Filipino-led community for aspiring freelancers, VAs, agency builders, and online earners, built to help you start, grow, and earn online together. Founders Launchpad, our ecosystem partner, early-stage accelerator providing venture capital funding, operational support, and mentorship. Hire Business Solutions, provider of the most configurable cloud-based payroll system in the Philippines. Agile Data Solutions, the Philippines' fastest-growing market insights tech company with its data gathering platform, HustlePH. Smile Checks, streamline hiring and onboarding with automated background checks. Cloud CFO, cloud accounting service provider for businesses ready to grow. Cloverly, all-in-one digital platform for property developers. Body Beauties, accessible and personalized diabetes self-management application. HKB Digital Services, tech-based business tools including payroll, ticketing, and loyalty rewards. Hyperstocks, digital banking enabler for rural and thrift banks. Wonderbrand, data science-driven brand strategy and design for emerging markets. This episode is powered by Josie AI, Uplift Code Camp, Board Prep, Kansan Barley, East Point Business Outsourcing Services, Filipina Home-Based Moms, Hex Colony, Jur.ph, Big Giant Games, Pahatid PH, Sugbudok, Agacon Aquafeeds, Juan Alj, Grey Wolf Technologies Philippines, Pareto Consulting, Sirius MD. Support the podcast through the link in the description.